Hey, what's going on? It's Robbie Fox. It's Jared Carrabis. We're doing From the Top this week. This is week 6, week 7. I don't know what it is. I'm all thrown off because we just started recording and Jared is not yet out in New York. He signed a lease, from what I understand. Him and our boss Dave signed a lease together because Jared is kind of a child and doesn't know how to do adult things.
See, hold on, hold
So,
on.
well,
And I know
hold
that
on,
this is
hold on. Let
all
me
right,
get
you
through
can go.
my
All
let me get
right,
through
go
my
ahead.
rant.
Go
I'm kind
ahead.
of thrown off. It was a weird intro this week because when we started our Skype call, which is how we record these podcasts, Jared appears to be in a fucking cave. It is
Yeah, it
pitch
would.
black and I could like only kind of see him. He looks like he is recording this live from the Osama bin Laden compound. It's like 11 o'clock at night on Tuesday right now. It's gonna distract me the whole episode, so just prepare for that. Jared, do you have a rebuttal to anything I just said there?
Yeah, I do. So first of all, I have to be on a train to New York City at 7 a.m. Like
Your
my
favorite city,
train.
from what I understand.
Right. So the train is at 7 a.m. and it's 11 o'clock at night. So yeah, I gotta improvise here. The Red Sox are still playing, so it's like I'm doing three different jobs at the same time, just grinding for the team. And the whole thing about the apartment, I knew that Dave was gonna blow this out of proportion because New York City is so fucking stupid that they have these rules where it's like you either have to make 40 times the rent or you have to uh, have someone sign off on it that makes 80 times the rent. So it's like I need to know someone that makes $250,000 a year so that I can get a fucking apartment in New York City. So yeah,
Well,
Dave.
the reason that that's not every apartment. The reason that this is a thing is because Jared does not understand the grid system that New York is based on. So New York has a grid where, 7th Ave comes right after 6th Ave and right before 8th Ave. Jared doesn't get that. So he's basically parking himself 2 feet away from our office because he doesn't know how to get, like, street to street.
But it's tactical. It's definitely something that's working out for me, and I'm doing what's best for me, Robbie Fox. That's
You know what?
it.
I'm going to let you be you.
Mhm,
We're going to let that happen.
sure.
Just know that you're like maybe 12. It's like you
Yeah.
it's crazy to not understand the like 3rd Ave, 4th Ave, 5th Ave. Like
Oh, I get it now. I get it now. But it's all about convenience. Got to be close to the office. Not trying to take any trains. I don't want to be on any trains with any of the dirty people of New York City.
all right, that seems to be a trend among people from Boston. So
Mm,
this is From the Top Rope. We are a wrestling podcast, believe
correct.
it or not. And you can find us on iTunes. If you're listening to this, you're probably listening on iTunes because we don't know how to get on all of the other podcast platforms. So rate us, review us, subscribe, download. Make sure you rate and review. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram. We're at From the Top, not Rope. We got our guy doing gifts for us on Monday, Tuesday pay per views. He'll be doing it for Battleground on Sunday. Nick Buono or something like that. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I've never met the guy.
Hmm.
He's doing a good job. So like definitely you got to start following those accounts because they're very very worth following. The Instagram, we could be better. That's just the self little behind the scenes it from the top. We could be
Well,
better on the
critique,
Instagram.
self-critique.
Yeah, we're humble here, which
Right.
people don't seem to think we are based on the Reddit thread that was made about us this week, and I'll bring that up later.
I didn't see
Really,
that.
really, just about me. It was just a Reddit thread
Okay.
like shitting on me. It was crazy.
Sad.
On the Squared Circle Reddit, those great human beings.
Hmm.
So this episode, we do have an interview. It's coming later in the show with Pat Buck. Pat Buck is not a super well-known name in the wrestling industry. If you're saying who's Pat Buck, you're gonna learn later. He was the guy that trained me how to be a wrestler. Obviously, wasn't successful, but he has been successful for other people in the past. He is a incredibly successful promoter here in the Northeast. He runs WrestlePro, used to run PWS when that was a good promotion before his partner Eric screwed him out of a lot of money. I hope he's okay with me saying that. And he is most famous in the Barstool world for super kicking me in the face WrestleMania weekend.
I
So
do recall.
we'll finally get to tell that story, and it was a good one. He's other than Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes, he is my best friend in the wrestling industry. So I wanted to have him on the podcast from the
What about
jump.
me?
You're not really in the industry. I wouldn't call you credible. That wouldn't be a word I would use to describe Jared
Well,
Carrabis.
I work for Barstool Sports.
Yeah, I know. Barstool is not credible.
No.
So let's get into it. Biggest news story of the week: Talking Smack has been canceled.
Sad. See, this was see, I feel like it probably doesn't do that great of ratings, but this is a place where I think some I guess talent on the roster can sort of go to have creative control with their own character. They're not being fed things to say from the writers or Vince McMahon. It's a place where these guys can go and be an extension of their characters and sort of interject their own personalities. Was Talking Smack the show that Daniel Bryan and The Miz had that sort of like work shoot?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so yeah, I'm surprised that they would sort of get rid of something, and it's only been around for like a year, maybe.
I don't even think it has been a year, has it?
Yeah, I don't even know. I would say let's call it a year, but I don't think that that's enough time for it to really get going. But yeah, as if you're a wrestling fan, if you're a diehard wrestling fan, because there's a lot to consume over the course of a week, especially if there's a pay-per-view. You're watching 2 hours of SmackDown, you're watching 3 hours of Raw, you're watching maybe 3 hours of a pay-per-view, and then so to get the extra coverage, to go to watch these guys just talking smack, that would be the name of the show. It's a lot. It's a lot to consume in 1 week's time. But that show did produce some quality content if you're a wrestling fan. So I will miss it personally.
I'll definitely miss it. I think the beginning of the end for Talking Smack was when 205 Live was introduced, and they pushed Talking Smack an hour later because of 205 Live. And I liked it as that post show. Immediately after SmackDown was over, you tune into the network, and they're talking about what just happened. Usually whoever was in the main event was hopping on Talking Smack still out of breath from the match. It was like a very good, like almost sport-like post show.
Yeah.
And then they pushed it an hour later, and it just became so tedious. It's like SmackDown's going to be over, and then I'm going to wait an hour or watch 205 Live, and then an hour later we'll talk about what happened on SmackDown. I didn't enjoy that, and I honestly fell off. Like I used to watch it religiously. Once they moved it an hour later, I would just go to bed and catch the highlights the next morning. It was such a place, like you said, to showcase certain guys' talents. And some people succeeded and some people didn't. The people that did succeed, this changed The Miz's career. That work shoot and everyone he did changed his career for the better. The Usos completely rejuvenated their careers.
Mm-hmm.
You look at like Baron Corbin, who was able to show personality. He never really shown on the mic in promos until he was on Talking Smack. He was able to push his I don't give a fuck attitude. I thought Renee Young and Daniel Bryan had a very funny relationship back and forth. It fucking sucks that they had
Dolph
to cancel
Ziggler was
this.
good on it too.
Yeah, Ziggler was good on it. He wasn't super over the top. It just, in my opinion, did nothing but good for the company. And it can't cost a lot to run. Everyone that was on it had a lot of fun on it. You saw when it got canceled, like everyone on the SmackDown roster immediately tweeted oh, rest in peace, Talking Smack. This was a great show. I wish it didn't happen this way. And it happened in a shitty way, too. Like, they didn't even tell Renee Young or Daniel Bryan that it was canceled. Vince apparently made his first SmackDown in a long time, hadn't been to a SmackDown show, which really surprised me. I thought he was at every show still. Like, came to his first one, was like, the fuck is Talking Smack? And then just, it was gone without telling anybody. It's a shitty situation all around. I don't see... I guess they're still going to do it after SmackDown pay-per-views. So at Battleground, they'll be doing it. And Jerry Lawler is going to be on it instead of Daniel Bryan, which seems like a horrible idea. Jerry Lawler is not a good guy. If he wants to come on the podcast, we'll talk about the old Memphis days, but let's be done with him, WWE.
What about Raw Talk?
I thought Raw Talk was bad. I never thought there was a good episode of Raw Talk.
So with Raw Talk, we're talking about with Talking Smack how it enhanced some characters outside of the ring. But with Raw Talk, I think that there were a couple examples of where it exposed some wrestlers to where maybe they're not so great in talking off the cuff.
Like Sasha?
I am
Sasha?
directly talking about Sasha. Yeah. The couple of times where I watched Raw Talk and she kind of, they were leading her to the water, but she could not drink. She was not great off the cuff. And, it just, I guess it shows that, some of them are great when they have their force-fed lines. But then others, when they kind of just go off on their own, some of them are great at that. I feel like Bray Wyatt is great at that.
Bray Wyatt is really good at that.
Yeah, but
Sasha
not
almost
everyone's
tried
good at
too
it.
hard to like force the gimmick to where she became really unlikable every time she was on Raw Talk.
Well, there was this one part, I forget, it might have been after a pay-per-view. I'm not sure if it was after an actual Raw show, but they asked her about like a Bailey match, and she was like, "Well, she tried really hard, and she just didn't get the job." Like you could tell that she like didn't even see the match and wasn't
Yeah.
prepared to be asked about it. So I mean, it's for a wrestler, it can be catastrophic, but for a fan, it's like, oh, that's interesting that this is happening, and you can sort of pick up on that.
Yeah. It's it's just a shame. I think Raw Talk was never good. Talking Smack, there were so many good moments though. Kevin Owens on it every week. Like
That was great.
whenever he was
Anytime
on it,
that
he was
him and
so
Jericho.
good. Him and
Yes.
Jericho, whenever he had the moments with Peter Rosenberg, where he would
Yeah.
just come on and shit on Peter Rosenberg, so funny. Everyone like, I just can't see why this happened, and that's kind of a theme for this episode. So we can move on to the next topic. I did want to just touch on this. Sami Zayn has started like a fundraiser for Syria, and I don't know the details, but I did want to, I didn't want to go with this podcast without mentioning it. You can go on his Twitter. I think his Twitter is at I like Sami Zayn and hashtag Sammy for Syria to see more details. I think it's just a really cool thing that he's doing. Wanted to mention it. The G1 Climax began this week. I don't think you saw any of it, Jared. Only night one took place, and there were two really good matches up top. Nato versus Ibushi main evented the first one. Nato got the win, which kind of surprised me. He's obviously a top dog there, but I would think Ibushi's return to New Japan as Kota Ibushi and not as Tiger Mask would have been bigger. Super brutal physical match. I can't imagine either of them don't have concussions from it. It was like that brutal. There's some lawn darts into their turnbuckles, which are just pads all the way down. Really good match. Would go out of my way to check that out. And Zack Sabre Jr. beat Tanahashi in an awesome technical physical match. And Zack Sabre Jr.'s G1 debut, which is just like really cool that New Japan is willing to have Tanahashi and Okada and Naito, Ibushi, like all of them are going to take a few clean losses during this tournament. Maybe some of them to like a comedy character like Toru Yano. It's just, I mean, it won't be clean if it's Yano, but I love the G1 every year. I used to pay $160 for like the whole. They used to run a plan where you could pay like 160 and get the whole run of G1, which is like 17 shows or like 12 shows, something like that. And now I get it for 928 or something. 999 yen. That's what I get it for now. In the
Why is
wrestling,
there such a disparity in the price?
well, it's like saying you used to be able to get pay-per-views for 60 a month, now you get them for 10 a month. It was just
Gotcha.
a change in platform.
Gotcha.
But I did when AJ Styles was in the G1, I think it was 2014. I I want to say it was 2014. It opened with AJ and Okada the first night, and I paid like 160 for that, and I watched every single show live because I was just in high school, didn't have a job, and it was during the summer. So I would stay up until like 7 a.m. every single day of the G1 to watch live. That was something. I remember just like looking out my window every day and seeing the sun rising and being like, "All right, main event's coming out soon." That was
You got to tell me about this shit. I told you I'm interested.
yeah. I should have told you. It's been a busy week, so I forgot.
Yeah. As for me, as the voice of the WWE fan that is interested in dabbling in other areas of pro wrestling, you need to get me in the loop on this
I
because there's
do.
people that are
Listen,
listening
when
to
you
this
move to
that-
New York, this is going to be a lot easier because we're going to see each
Sure.
other in the office every day. I'm going to be like, Jared, watch this match.
Okay.
We could watch it together. We could hook it up to the 6 TVs at the bar in our office. Big screen. That's sweet. The office doesn't love it when I do that, but I do it anyway.
Yeah.
In WWE this week, there was a really good segment that, I don't want to turn. I'm not saying I'm turning around, but Seth Rollins has had a few good weeks strung together.
I knew this was going to happen. I knew that this was going to happen with you
I
because
don't think it's going to happen. Listen, I don't want to dislike Seth Rollins. I
that's
really
a
don't.
lie. That is
No,
a lie.
I don't want to dislike because I loved him in the Shield. Absolutely loved him in the Shield.
What happened?
I liked when he cashed in. I liked his whole lead up when he came back from injury. I think it was that where he was so bad. And his psychology was never great. I'll say that.
So,
I
all right,
always, before he even got injured, I was like, this
that's your
guy's
main
really good, but
point.
his psychology's not very good.
Your main point all along has been the psychology. But with Seth Rollins, what does he do besides that just rubs you the wrong way to where
I
you
think his
can't even root for the guy?
I think his promos are trash. I think he's one of the worst promos in the entire company.
He does
But
fumble words a lot.
this week, he cut a very good promo, and this is a segment that I've been waiting a long time for. So
Mm.
Dean Ambrose was in the ring talking about the Miz, talking about the Miz Taraj and all of them. I don't know how you don't just call them the Misfits. Like that's their stable name. It's like the Fashion Police. I love the Fashion Police. You got Fandango and Tyler Breeze. You got to call them Fabries. Like that's their name. Come on, be
Sure,
better.
there's probably legal ramifications there.
Fabries and the Misfits. Cutting a promo on them, Seth Rollins came out and said, Dean, when I go up against the Miz, I want to know, are you going to stand alongside me or in my way? And they had a back and forth about the breakup of the Shield, because Seth called him brother, which a lot of wrestlers do. I actually have every wrestler I have saved in my phone under their business. I just write brother, so I could type in brother, and everyone pulls up, even the lady wrestlers. It's just a thing that us insiders do.
Mm,
I know people will love me calling myself an insider after this week,
mm.
but they talked about the Shield breakup, and this is something I think we've talked about on the show. I know we talked about it at the house show. When Seth turned face, he just started tag teaming with Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose, and there's no explanation as to why they like each other anymore.
Yes.
And it was like, you guys shouldn't like each other. You guys just feuded for a year. You got your face curb stomped
3 years.
through cinder blocks. Yeah, 3 years. 3 years. Literally curb stomped through cinder blocks. Like threatened to murder. You like Dean cashed in on Seth even. There's so many reasons they should dislike each other, but now just because they both feud with bad guys, they're all good with each other. This
So I
segment
think
corrected
didn't
that.
you make this point last week that the Shield has now been apart from each other longer than they've actually been together?
Correct.
So, like, I found this whole segment to be extremely interesting for a change. There are some segments now that just are just boring, and I can't get into it. But with this one, it was like, okay. I mean, the Shield is definitely still hot for as long as they've been apart. You know, when we went to that show at MSG, you had the crowd chanting for Ambrose to come out and form a Shield reunion, and you had the crowd chanting for the Shield, and you had Seth Rollins acknowledging the crowd's chants and saying, you know, we can hear you, and that was sort of teasing a Shield reunion, which we thought maybe could have been just pandering to the crowd and just, you know, we're going to acknowledge what you guys are asking for because we can't actually give it to you. But yeah, it seems like with this segment here, there was closure to the whole Shield breakup, and we haven't seen that, and
And
it was
Seth
just
finally
weird.
came off kind of likable. He said,
Right.
"Listen, I'm sorry." Like this was the first apology ever. He said, "Listen, I'm sorry. Like I shouldn't have done that. I made a lot of mistakes. I was influenced by the wrong people." And he, put his arms out, turned around, and said, "If it makes you feel better, you hit me with that chair. I don't know what's gonna make you feel better, but it was a very like, dude, it was 3 years ago. Like we got to move on from this." And Ambrose was even great when he was saying, "You're not my brother. My brother was in the Shield, and he looked a lot like you, but I could trust him, and I could, count on him, and he had my back all the time." Great, great, great segment. Like this is what we've been asking for like since Seth turned face in September.
Right. Yeah, and it's because that was another big thing too, is that so Seth Rollins just took a pedigree from Triple H and got screwed over in a match against Kevin Owens. So I guess that means he's a face now. Like just because another bad guy doesn't like the other bad guy, that means that the other bad guy is a good guy now.
Yeah, that's just not how wrestling works.
No, no. And I think, when he got hurt and he returned and got that huge pop when he came out and pedigreed Roman Reigns,
One of the
that was
loudest
a big
pops I've
face
ever
pop.
been a part of.
But then the next night he came out and cut a heel promo.
Yep.
So they kind of botched that there if the plan was to make him a face. But yeah, this was really the only true face moment since Seth Rollins' original heel turn was coming out and apologizing. And it wasn't just some bullshit apology. It was like, hey, I'm going to let you do to me what I did to you. And Ambrose chose not to do it.
Yeah. So that was that was a real high point of Raw. Raw opened with this, and I was like, man, that was fucking good. Maybe we're gonna have a good episode. Kurt Angle's gonna do his big reveal. All right, we didn't have a good episode, guys, because Kurt Angle's reveal. He comes out to the ring with his billion-yard stare. It gets longer every week. His stare into oblivion. Comes out and he says, well, if you watched my WWE 24 special, you would know me and my family have gone through a lot recently. And I'm like, oh boy. Tell me, like, you're about to, after that great 24 special with your whole family, tell me you're about to say that you're having an affair with someone. And, like, just throw that out the window. It reminded me of Cedric Alexander, what we talk about with, him having his family, and then they just put him in an angle with Alicia Fox. It's like, come on, guys. They didn't do that. And he said, I just want to let you know that my family is 100% behind me, and they're all okay with this. And as they're doing it, I'm like, holy shit, this is going to be very progressive. Kurt Angle's gay. It's like, part of me was like, this is like very much the verbiage that someone that, you see it on like the TLC shows, like when someone's gay, but they've had a family for years, and it's like, I've been lying to myself for years. Finally, I can come out, and my family's supporting me. They understand.
Yeah.
I was like, this is an incredibly progressive angle. Jesus.
Yeah.
And then he says, when I was in college, I had sexual relations with a young girl. Or, I don't know how he worded it, but he basically said, I fucked someone. And 9 months later, out popped a baby. And that baby was a great athlete. And he went to a great wrestling school. And I'm like, oh my God, is Chad Gable his son? And then he said, let me introduce to you my son. You may know him from American Alpha, Jason Jordan.
Yeah.
And Jason Jordan came out with this huge smile. They were and Kurt Angle like went hysterically crying. It was so weird.
That was.
And then
it was
they,
very
they,
weird.
They hugged in the ring, both like tears flowing, hysterically crying, both seeming like they were brainwashed by someone. This segment, Jared. This segment was so fucking bad.
It was, and we talked about this last week. The build up to it was very strange because they did a promo for it on SmackDown because we had that whole phone call that Kurt Angle got on Raw, and being like, oh well, it's gonna come out, so I gotta get ahead of this, and I'll handle this, and I love you, and blah 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 blah. And then they did a promo for that on SmackDown the following night, and it just seemed like they were mocking a soap opera. Like it seemed like it was a joke. Like it wasn't supposed to be serious.
Agreed.
And then they actually did it, and I was waiting for the promo, and it just never came. Like he comes out, they hug and they cry, and then
that was it.
That
they
was
went
it.
To commercial.
There was no like explanation. There was no like, here's what we're gonna do from here, or
it was like instantly like they're crying, they're hugging, and make sure you check out American Ninja Warrior Teams on USA coming up next. I was like, what the fuck was that? I said it was
weird.
something out of a dying WCW. That's something you saw on Nitro in 2001 with the David Flair like got Stacy Keibler pregnant. We don't know who the baby is. Like that's what it was, and it was
reeked
so
of Vince Russo.
Fucking bad. I actually talked to someone like a wrestling journalist, and I'm not gonna say his name, but he said this reeks of Vince Russo, and I was like, yeah. And he said the conspiracy theorist in me says that Vince Russo emailed Vince because Vince Russo publicly said I emailed Vince and said if you need my help, I'll help you. Or I think Russo might have like straight up said like, bro, you need my help. Let me know if you want to give me a job. And this journalist I talked to said the conspiracy theorist in me says Vince was rattled by that and was like, I'll write like a soap opera. I don't need Vince Russo to do that, and did it because I came out and said, and I've confirmed this with my sources. Barstool, we joked in the beginning, we are reliable. This was a Vince angle from the very beginning. Angle, no pun intended, but this is about Kurt Angle. This storyline was Vince's idea. Vince crafted it. Vince put it through. The writers, not so happy about it. The writing team of like 28 to 32 people at any time were like not fully behind Vince on this, and we're like, you sure, boss? This seems a little weird. And he was like, God damn it, this guy's a wrestler. He's in a singlet. Who else? Kurt Angle. He's back. This is my dream, man. And they're like, all right. So I said this in my blog today, I blog Raw every Monday and Tuesday, or every Tuesday and Wednesday, the day after they happen, Raw and SmackDown. And I just mentioned in my blog, I said this was so bad. I went on and on about how bad this segment was. And I said, by the way, this was a Vince thing. I said what I just said. And then a couple stoolies send me today the Squared Circle Reddit just shitting on me. And someone posted like, hey, like Robbie from Barstool said this, just a heads up, kind of an interesting tidbit. And the top comment with like 40 upvotes says Robbie Fox is like 17 years old and Kevin Owens is his, quotes, friend because he would make t-shirts for free. And everyone's like, well, not reading this, thanks for wasting my time. Somebody called you and me sexist. They said because we didn't like the second women's Money in the Bank match. And then everyone accused me of being the original poster of the thing, being like, they thought I was the guy that posted it, being like, check out this story by this great writer, Robbie, from Barstool, who I most definitely am not. And they're all like what the fuck, guys? This guy's like, hey, check out this report. And everyone's like, well, fuck that 12-year-old. He's not reliable, and he hates women.
So, what?
Where did this come from?
What about us disliking the Money in the Bank match makes us sexist? Because it was the same exact thing as the original, only they just wanted to do it over again and make it. And we liked
the original.
Yeah.
And we defended the original, saying that the company wasn't really sexist. Let me read you this comment. They said, it's Barstool's overall sexism. Listen to their thoughts on the second women's Money in the Bank match, and there's obvious sexism criticizing for things that they praised in the men's match. And here's this one, hand up. He might be a little true about this. He says he thinks he's a better wrestling fan than everyone else. And then he quotes me. This is a fake quote. This is not verbatim from me. I've seen every event, and I watch so much Japanese wrestling. I choose to listen with Japanese commentary.
It is kind of true. You mean you
it's
do?
Kind of true. I don't think. I think it's weird that people are using that. I've seen a lot of wrestling against me. They're like, well, this fucking guy who hosts a wrestling podcast says that he watches all wrestling.
Yeah.
Come on, guys.
Way to do a great job, you piece of shit. Way to actually study everything so that you know what you're talking about, you asshole.
Unbelievable. We're trying to have a good time on this podcast. We talk to the fans, the listeners. We're on Twitter constantly responding to you guys, talking. I feel like our community is very good. This From the Top Rope community. I love the listeners. We need a name for our listeners. We haven't discussed it on the podcast. Pardon My Take's got the award-winning listeners. This, that. I want to call you guys grapple fucks, but I don't know how that's going to go over. I think
not mainstream enough.
I don't think it's going to go mainstream. I just think it'd be like, you guys see each other in the street. You're like, oh, you're wearing a Barstool shirt. You a grapple fuck? And it's like, yeah, grapple fuck. Grapple fuck city, man. That's where we live. And then I could even maybe open the podcast week to week. Greetings, grapple fucks.
See,
that'd be sick.
I think it has to be organic. I feel like now that we've put it on the table, we're going to get a bunch of tweet submissions, and then we can pick the best one. Like, they should name themselves. Sort of like the universal title. It's like, this title is for all the people.
We're a democracy.
We need a name for the people. Yeah.
So, I mean, I like our circle. Outside of our circle, it seems that people don't like us. Maybe we're the bad boys of wrestling podcasting, which is probably already taken because we're the billionth wrestling podcast to show up on iTunes.
I guess you also have to realize that people just hate Barstool. The Barstool community is huge, but once you venture outside of that, it's very hard to convert people into liking Barstool. And there's also now the dynamic of people think that they're late to the party. So now that Barstool has gotten so big over the last couple of years, now you have the people who want to get into Barstool, but they feel like they're bandwagon jumpers for doing it. So the cool thing is to hate Barstool because they didn't get in soon enough.
I didn't know that. That's very interesting. That's from someone that's kind of grizzled in this Barstool thing. I'm more of a recent hire, so I didn't realize that. It's an interesting point, definitely. People do hate Barstool. I mean, there was that whole Business Insider article criticizing our CEO for saying that she will text people off hours and expect a response within 3 hours.
Yeah.
That is.
And she said weird times, too. Like,
we don't have to get into it, but, like, that's just crazy. I mean, it's 11:21 p.m. We're recording this podcast. We don't have a 9 to 5 job. Sometimes you got to work on later hours than 9 to 5.
Sometimes you gotta fucking record a podcast at almost midnight in your girlfriend's apartment when she's sleeping.
All right, congrats on the sex. We get it.
Thanks.
I did want to touch on SmackDown was very uneventful this week, and we'll touch on it when talking about Battleground coming up in a second. But before we mention that, I just got to say the X-Files Fashion Police segment tonight was amazing, and Tyler Breeze in the same sentence brought up Max Moon, who is my favorite obscure wrestler from the 90s, and Chewbacca. So he might be my favorite wrestler now, and he's followed me on Twitter for a few years. So shout out you, Tyler Breeze. You're my favorite wrestler now.
One of my most favorite things to do is to watch wrestling segments with people who don't normally watch wrestling to get like a
Is
totally.
this your way of bringing up your girlfriend again?
No,
Is it?
this is not the central point.
It is.
The central point is that it's funny to watch shit like that when they're expecting like a wrestling match and then they
With
get
who? With who?
the whole point, Robbie, is when you watch wrestling
Okay.
with someone who doesn't normally watch wrestling, it's high entertainment. When they just don't get it because they expect something completely different than the Fashion Police.
You know what, Jared? I agree with your point. I was watching SmackDown tonight with a few supermodels, and they just didn't know what to expect. And when the Fashion Police came on, and I was like, "Buckle up, ladies! You're in for a treat."
Right. It's interesting.
Speaking of treats, let's talk Battleground. Battleground is this Sunday in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It is a SmackDown exclusive pay-per-view headlined by Jinder Mahal, and shocker, they had a really hard time selling tickets to this event. In Philly, a huge wrestling town, front row seats are still available. You can still get them as of Tuesday night, and it looks to be nowhere near a sellout because they're dropping ticket prices by 20% as early as I want to say last Saturday. I mean, they just can't sell tickets. So this Jinder Mahal experiment, I think it's because, first of all, this card isn't very good, but I think
how much of it is the roster?
Listen, it's a very old school mentality to blame the champion for ratings, but I'm kind of blaming the champion for ratings. And just the top feuds haven't been good since the Superstar Shakeup. Superstar Shakeup has been good for very few people. I think Kevin Owens maybe is doing the best because he's got that U.S. title feud, but he had the Jericho stuff on Raw. He just seems better suited for Raw, for me at least. The women's divisions, I don't like the women's divisions the way they're split up. I would prefer the way they used to be. I don't know. I think the shakeup was not very good.
Well, yeah, Charlotte, I think, has been hurt the most in the women's division since coming over. And then, I don't know, I guess you made this point a few weeks ago that no one wanted to see Randy Orton and Jinder Mahal the first time, never mind the second, third, and fourth time. Is this the fourth time? Or is it the third?
Third.
Yeah, regardless, it's too many fucking times. Like the fact that we can't even count how many there actually were. There's too many. And I'm not necessarily blaming Jinder Mahal for a lack of interest here because, John Cena's back. And it's
that's a good point.
John Cena is in a match against fucking Rusev in a flag on a fucking pole match where no one gives a shit about that. No one cares about this feud. No one cares about the stipulation in the match. It's not exciting. It is different, but it's not interestingly different. I think the whole I guess it because when I asked you, is it a roster thing versus a card thing? I think it is a roster thing. I think that, who am I tuning in to watch? Is it John Cena? Because for me, it's not. Who am I?
I don't know, man. I don't hate Styles. The SmackDown. I don't hate the SmackDown roster. They got AJ Styles. They got John
Kevin
Cena.
Owens.
They got Kevin Owens. They got.
That's it.
I like Baron Corbin. I like Shinsuke.
I don't.
I like the New Day. I like Usos. I mean, the women's division has talent. I just think I don't like the way they've been used. And on this card too, it's kind of just a clusterfuck. It's a fatal five-way match.
What has Shinsuke Nakamura done since he's been on the main roster?
Nothing.
What was his defining moment?
I've taken issue with that. His defining moment was the face-off and stare down with no, I wouldn't even say that. In the Money in the Bank match with AJ Styles.
Yeah. So and that wasn't even really on a SmackDown. That was on a pay-per-view. So it's you look at the talent is there, but it's the feuds, They like name the last feud that you were invested in as a fan on SmackDown.
On SmackDown, ooh, it's tough. It might be The Miz versus Dolph Ziggler from last year.
Okay. So my answer is not going to be popular.
What's that?
It's Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton. I was invested in that up until WrestleMania. After that, not so much. But
Up until the Royal Rumble, I was.
yeah, I mean, for me, it was WrestleMania being like, I enjoyed the angle of Randy being
Or
in the
you know what?
Wyatt.
Actually, I really enjoyed AJ and Cena leading up to the Royal Rumble. I thought that was fantastic. Cena kind of carried it on the mic because AJ's
Yeah.
never been great on
Was that
promos.
was that before or after the SummerSlam match?
After
Okay.
Royal Rumble, January, SummerSlam, August,
Yeah.
months.
Months.
So on this card, we got Ty Dillinger and Aiden English on the pre-show again. This kind of screams like we don't know what to do with either of you because this has been a pre-show match for 2 months in a row now. It was good last month, so I imagine it will be good this month. Not much to say about it though. It seems like they just don't know what the fuck to do with either of them.
Nope.
Ty Dillinger might benefit from going to Raw. Like I would rather see Ty Dillinger feud with The Miz for the IC title right now than Ambrose still.
Well, this was another thing that you had said about Ty Dillinger. They haven't really told his story. It's just kind of like, oh, he's here.
Yeah.
Like
He says
he's
10.
number 10. He
He says
says
10 a
10
lot.
and he's number 10 in the Royal Rumble. Get it? It's funny. And that was it. There's been no I don't even has he even had any mic time at all?
Nah, I want to say no.
So, yeah, they can
At
do
least
better.
at least no mic time where like I would remember it. You know what
Right.
benefit a guy like Ty Dillinger?
What?
Talking smack.
Right.
He'd be great on Talking Smack. Ooh,
Be
it's
great if they
shame
had a
that
show where
doesn't
he'd just
exist
go on and
anymore.
talk. Yeah.
Usos versus the New Day for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but basically what we said should have happened on the last pay-per-view, I believe should happen here, because as much as I am a firm believer in every pay-per-view should be big, the big four are cool, but the matches made them what they are. The classic matches that happened during those pay-per-views made them what they are, not their name. And that's been an issue in the WWE for so long. It's like UFC. I'm a big UFC fan. I like to draw comparisons there. The next pay-per-view is on July 29th, and it's UFC 214. And this card is one of the best cards I've ever seen in my life. 214 is special because of that. It's not special because it has a number. They try to make the certain numbers bigger, but 200 they tried to make big. It was forgettable in the end. It's almost the same case with this, where I believe they should make Battleground. The goal should be to make it Battleground, Roadblock, Clash of the Champions, Hell in a Cell, whatever these little tiny pay-per-views are. The goal should be to make them into the big four, and we saw it happen with Money in the Bank.
Yeah.
But,
Which we totally said swap out Survivor Series.
Yes. But on this one, I almost feel like we're so close to SummerSlam. You gotta get us to SummerSlam. This isn't a defining pay-per-view. This is okay, get us to SummerSlam already. And SummerSlam should have the New Day title win on it. The Usos should get a clean win here.
A clean win.
Yeah. I think the Usos should get a clean win so we get that moment that I wanted on the last pay-per-view where the New Day's like, oh shit, these guys are like, they're not just, cheating heels. They're not just fucking around with us. These guys are good.
Mm-hmm. And you think that there's going to be a rematch at SummerSlam?
Correct.
So this would be the third pay-per-view in a row.
Yeah.
And are you okay with that?
I am. If they get a clean win, I think it's a story worth telling. That they got counted out the first time, they get a clean win, and the New Day has to be like, all right, it was fun and games, we did the rap battle stuff, but like, let's
Which
not
was great.
kid around for a second. Yeah.
Yeah. The rap battle is great. And did you see that Del Rio is actually pissed about that?
Of course he is. Del Rio's a fucking shithead. I hate that guy. I fucking hate Alberto Del Rio. There was a video that came out, PW Insider, like almost, I have some acquaintances, I wouldn't even call them friends, that work at PW Insider, so nothing against them, but shame on that website for posting the video of Paige and Del Rio walking, like holding hands, hugging each other backstage at some soccer game that was clearly sent in by Paige to have like a false story. You can look this up. I guarantee you Paige sent in a video of her and Alberto like all lovey-dovey to be like, look, we're in a healthy relationship, which they're not. And PW Insider was like, we normally wouldn't post stuff like this, but given all of the stuff going on, we will. It's literally just them walking. It's such a tabloid, like, cheesy. Shame on them for posting that.
I
Next
didn't
up,
see it. Go ahead.
John Cena will battle Rusev in a flag match, capture the flag. There's a Bulgarian flag. I almost said Iranian. I don't know where that came from. Bulgarian flag on one corner and American flag on the other. I haven't seen a flag match in a while. I think it is just to capture the flag. Like, go get your flag.
Yeah. Tell me why I care about this match.
John Cena's a good wrestler. Rusev's a good wrestler. They've had good matches in the past.
There's
no
so
actual reason.
Bad.
There's no actual reason to care.
No, there's no reason at all.
But I feel like when you have the two talents involved, I'll care. Like I care in the sense that like I don't care, okay, but I am expecting this to be good.
It feels rushed. Like it's like they did have a good build to their WrestleMania match a couple of years ago. That was all right.
That build was good. This just does it feel to you like they're doing Cena and Jinder at SummerSlam?
Yes. Yeah. That's the vibe that I'm getting. Unless Jinder drops it in the Punjabi prison, which I guess you could have Randy with the title. I don't know if it would be Randy and Cena. We've seen so many times.
Yeah, and if you're gonna do that again, this is gonna be a very unpopular opinion. People are gonna hate me for this. If you're gonna do Randy Orton versus John Cena again, it main events WrestleMania. And I would have no issue with it at all. I'm of the belief that, yes, we've seen that a million times. I didn't have an issue with it in 2014 because I thought all of their matches were very good.
Yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with the quality of the matches.
You go back and you watch that Royal Rumble match where the crowd was absolutely shitting on them, chanting for everyone but them, and the way they adapted just, two veterans in the ring. The crowd was chanting for Chris Jericho, so Cena put on a Walls of Jericho mid-match. That was fucking such a good match that the crowd just didn't care about. It's like if you guys would have been interested in it, but in the end I kind of supported it because it was all for Daniel Bryan, and he got his moment at WrestleMania 30.
True.
So I hope they don't do Jinder and Cena because we'll be at SummerSlam. I'm a big SummerSlam guy, and Cena is Mr. SummerSlam to me. He had this AJ Styles match the last year. He had the Daniel Bryan match. He had the CM Punk match in 2011 that you go back, a lot of people thought it was better than the Money in the Bank match. Like, Cena is Mr. SummerSlam. If Shawn Michaels is Mr. WrestleMania, he's Mr. SummerSlam. So I hope he's not dragged down by Jinder.
Because, I kind of get the vibe that Jinder will drop to Randy in the Punjabi prison, which we haven't talked about yet. I do get that vibe. Because do you honestly think that the company will go with Jinder as the champion going into their second biggest show of the year?
I think they might. Now,
what?
We're getting into this too soon. What I would hope, and this is a far out, hope. I want Jinder to drop to Orton here, go into SummerSlam champion, and just play transitional champion. In my best case scenario, it's like against either AJ Styles or Kevin Owens. But that seems very unrealistic to me. I can't see any scenario in which that would happen. I think it'd be very, very cool if they did AJ retains the U.S. title, and at SummerSlam we get champion versus champion, just like they did with Seth Rollins and John Cena. And you do AJ Styles versus Randy Orton for the championship. That's a huge SummerSlam match.
But wouldn't it make
face
more
versus
sense?
Face. Do it like that. Like the crowd will be split.
Wouldn't it make more sense, though, if Kevin Owens dropped the title for this opportunity? Because,
Yes,
the fact that he dropped it at a house show, it would make way more sense if it's like, it's because he's about to enter the title picture at SummerSlam.
Yeah, but they're doing the rematch here, which is like if he dropped it at a house show, and they almost teased that he wouldn't get that rematch clause. AJ was like, he's going to have to work for this rematch. And I was like, that kind of goes
That's
against
not how it
this.
works.
Yeah, which I hate the rematch clause, by the way. We haven't talked about that, but I hate the rematch clause. In the Attitude Era, the rematch clause was a big thing because every now and then someone would reveal like, oh, by the way, I had a rematch clause, and the crowd would go crazy. Now it's literally everyone has one. It's like
right.
It just forces matches that people don't necessarily want to see. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Next up is the Fatal 5-Way for the Women's SmackDown Championship. Charlotte Flair versus Becky Lynch versus Natalya versus Tamina Snuka versus Lana. Two of these women are good wrestlers. And did I mention Naomi? Is Naomi in
You're
this
a
match?
sexist piece
Wait
of
a minute.
shit.
Is
Well,
Naomi
she
in this
has to be.
match?
She's the champion.
She is the champion. Let me look at this Battleground thing. Is it a number one contenders match?
I remember watching
Yeah, it
SmackDown
is.
tonight,
All right,
thinking
it's a
like
number
she was
one
like,
contenders match.
yeah, she was wishing luck to whoever won.
Yeah. So this is what I mean when I say like I don't like the way the women's division is being treated. It's like you just throw them all in a match every month now.
Pretty much, and that's what
Can they
happens at
not have their own
WrestleMania.
feuds? Like it's almost cruiserweight division where it's like these guys aren't part of the show. Like they're
Yeah.
all just throw all the women in one match together. No, how about we don't do that? How about I want to see Charlotte feud with Natalya?
Well, because
They
I
had a
also
good match in NXT, and I want
I
to
also
see
look at
Becky
like
feud with Lana. I don't,
the women's division is basically like it's not big enough, so they're just always constantly feuding with each other because like it isn't like a big group. Like the groups are feuding with each other. It's
Yeah.
like a big mass of feud.
And that's what was
Uh,
so bad about the original women's revolution was the faction warfare. It was just made everything a clusterfuck.
Yeah, yeah, that was weird. Team bad.
I think either Charlotte or Becky wins here because they want that. I think it'll probably be Charlotte. So I'm going out there already. It is July 18th as we record this, and I'm making a bold SummerSlam prediction. Charlotte will face Naomi and beat her for the SmackDown Women's Championship, only to be cashed in on by Carmella in Brooklyn.
That makes a lot of sense.
I think that's what's happening.
Yeah,
I think even if Charlotte doesn't win, I think Carmella cashes in at SummerSlam.
yeah, I mean that crowd would definitely pop for a cash in.
Huge. That's the crowd you want for. They didn't get their historic women's moment they wanted in either of the Money in the Bank matches. So here's how you get it: is the giant pop that Brooklyn would give Carmella.
Yeah, which is why I think it's probably going to be Becky that goes over in this match. I mean, because you can't it's not going to be Tamina. It's not going to be Natty.
She was on SmackDown tonight and just did like a beatdown and screwed everything up. Tamina might be the worst professional wrestler of all time.
Potentially, yeah. But I would
if
say
she came on the podcast, I'd be like, Tamina, with all due respect to your murderous father and you, you might be the worst professional wrestler of all time.
I'm going to see if we can get her on just so you can say that.
I don't know if I would say that. That seems mean.
It is. It's a little harsh.
Yeah.
Harsh, probably the word. But yeah, I think Becky's going to go over in this one because if it is a cash in, I don't know. Yeah, because you would want Carmella to cash in on a face, right? So you would have basically,
which of course you could even do Naomi as a face. So
yeah,
you could have a heel win this and Naomi retains. But I think the cash-ins that are title change cash-in always are they feel bigger because someone just got their moment. It was with Seth, with Daniel Bryan. Someone just got their moment, and then it's like rain on your parade immediately.
Yeah, big fan of that.
Next up, Shinsuke Nakamura versus Baron Corbin. I'm very excited for this one actually because I'm really a big Baron guy. It's funny that Pat McAfee said that. We didn't really bring that up post-show, but Pat McAfee was like, Baron Corbin, he's my guy. Watch whatever he's on.
And so did Billy Gunn.
Yeah,
Do you remember
Billy
that?
Gunn said the same thing.
He said he only watches WWE when Baron Corbin's on.
Yeah, I like the guy, but I don't only watch when he's on. I think he's very, very good, though, and I think
he's improving.
The exchanges that him and Nakamura had on SmackDown tonight in the main event tag were all very good. Like
I
he
still
had
can't
like a
buy
cool
him on
deep
the mic.
six out of a Kinshasa. I don't know, the Bama knee, whatever it is. It'll be good. Shinsuke probably goes over. They like having the Money in the Bank winners lose a lot leading up to their cash-in. Like they pretty much lose for an entire year because they'll eventually get that moment. And they want to keep the artist known as Shinsuke Nakamura strong. Kevin Owens versus AJ Styles for the United States Championship. I think it'll be a really good match, but I think it's very obvious that Kevin Owens will not retain or win back his title.
You okay with that?
I mean, define okay. It's like I don't think. I think he's going to not win back the title, and then I don't know what his SummerSlam plans are. And he
That's why I
said on
think
his documentary that he was not happy with SummerSlam last year, opening the show in a tag team match because he wanted to be main eventing. That was right after he had like a 5-star match with Sami Zayn on Battleground. So
that's what I'm saying. I smell Kevin Owens entering the title picture in some shape or form at SummerSlam.
I mean, I would be happier than anyone about that, but I just don't see it in the future. I'm looking at him like, what are they gonna do? Like, put him against Corbin? I don't know. Uh,
But I mean, don't you think that it's, if you lose your United States Championship at a house show, there has to be something bigger coming. You don't just, we didn't get an explanation for that. It was just like, oh, well, he lost at a house show. And I know that they like to do special things at MSG. And that would, if they don't have like a big name return, they go with the title change. So, but if you're Kevin Owens, you must be like, well, uh, what's coming next? Like what's next for me? If this is just I think it's obviously doing a solid for not only AJ Styles but the company. It's like, all right, I'm going to give you that wow moment. Now what are you going to do for me? You owe me one.
yeah.
So I don't know. I think that if it isn't the heavyweight title at SummerSlam, it's got to be something bigger. Not bigger than the title, but just bigger than, another
I mean, you could do
US
bigger than the title.
match.
You could do an inter-brand match, which could be bigger than the title potentially, because that's what we got as our main event last year. It was Brock and Randy Orton, where they had a shoot finish where Brock just concussed the fuck out of Randy Orton.
Yeah, literally just like
I was there live. It
ground
was a weird
outwards.
environment, and we were all kind of like, "The fuck was that?" And as I was leaving, I was like, "You know what? I think I liked that." I was
Mm,
like, "I think I liked that finish."
yeah.
In the main event, we will see Randy Orton take on Jinder Mahal, and more importantly, the Singh brothers, in a Punjabi prison match. The return of the Punjabi prison. We've all been asking for it. We've all been saying, God damn it, when is that Punjabi prison going to come back? They have answered our prayers.
Um,
How
so,
excited are you to see like what kind of wild bump one of the Singh brothers is going to take off the bamboo thing?
it's going to be incredible.
That's
But I
going to be
think that
awesome.
this is just one of those matches where it's so bad that it's good. And
I hope so.
I mean, they all have been. They're all so bad that it's good. And I personally never thought that we would see another one of these ever again. It just didn't fit anywhere. I mean, obviously, none of us knew that Jinder Mahal was ever going to become a main eventer to where he would get one of these matches.
Yep.
So that's the biggest point. But now that they've sort of propelled him into this position where he has the title, he's been in not a meaningful feud, I guess, but a feud with someone of main event status, and it's the big payoff. And I keep looking at that calendar, and I see SummerSlam coming up, and I just can't imagine that after the ratings dip and the lack of being able to sell out a pay-per-view where he's on the main event of the card, that they can go into SummerSlam with Jinder Mahal as the champion. I can't see it. So I think that this is where the ride ends. I think Randy Orton goes over here, wins the title, and then drops it to whomever they want at SummerSlam.
I hope so, and you could lead up to that Randy Orton versus John Cena match by giving him
But
another
no.
short reign. 16-time champion versus 16-time champion. Who will
I
be
mean
the
that
first to break Ric Flair's record?
that's actually a pretty good angle. That's a good angle.
It's not bad. So here's my thing. I mean, you said everything there is to say about the Punjabi prison. I tend to agree with everything you said there. Do you think they had this Punjabi prison just lying around in the warehouse? Like I like to believe that there's one guy. I know there's like the archivist or something. Is that his title? Who runs the warehouse and keeps everything. And from
Mhm.
what I understand, we got to get to that warehouse one way or another
Yes.
because from what I understand, they keep everything. They have like the ring that was used in WrestleMania 1 and all like just everything there's ever been. I like to believe that there was one guy sitting around being like, "This fucking bamboo Punjabi prison is taking up so much room. Do we really need this? Are we ever gonna fucking use this again?" And everyone's like, I don't know." And then he threw it out one day, and like the next day, he gets a call from Vince, and he's like, "We still got that Punjabi prison, huh? I got a good idea." And he's like, "Oh fuck!" He needs to like dumpster dive for the bamboo pieces. That just makes me laugh. I mean, they lowered it on SmackDown tonight. This whole Punjabi prison, it's a sight. It's an eyesore. It's very hard to
It
see
is.
what's going on in the ring.
Yeah.
It's like that.
It's
Remember that TNA? Were you weren't a huge TNA guy? They had like this
no.
red bird cage type deal. It was like their version of a steel cage, was just a bird cage over the ring that had a ceiling and everything, and it was
Yeah.
bright red with thick bars. You could not see anything.
So like, is this the third ever Punjabi prison match in history? Is it three?
Either the third or the fourth.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, after watching the first two or three, or however many there were, I know I've seen them all. This is just, I wonder if now that there's been so much time in between the last one, it's been 10 years,
Yeah.
uh, that maybe they've sort of figured out how to make it more interesting, I guess.
I gotta be honest, Carrabis. I don't think for the last 10 years they've been like perfecting a plan to make the Punjabi prison perfect. I hope this is just a stiff match. I hope they're stiff as fuck with each other. They like cut each other both open the hard way. They're doing brutal moves. Make the Punjabi prison worth watching. Make this, you know what? This should be Mankind versus The Undertaker, King of the Ring. Should be like just the most brutal, get thrown off the top of it. I don't know.
That's the only time that I've seen the warehouse that you're talking about is because I think what was it on like Holy Foley, Mick Foley went back to it and he was walking around and they still have like the original Hell in a Cell and he was like having a moment with it, like he saw
Yeah.
like the actual like steel cage and
And
he
a
was
little
like
PTSD flashback. Like, oh
yeah, he like
shit.
started to get emotional and he's like yep, this is it right here. But yeah, I don't know, fucking Punjabi prison. I mean, I'm I'm in. You know, it's one of those things where you definitely didn't expect to ever see it again, but now that it's back, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, you know what? You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
Let's get nuts.
And in honor of the Punjabi prison, our cream of the crop this week, which I'm very excited about, is the best worst match stipulation. Jared, what do you got?
The best worst match stipulation is the bra and panties match. So I kind of
You sexist fuck.
it's the best because you know back in the day it's like you could see Tori Wilson and Trish Stratus and it was just like you know I was in elementary school going into like middle school and I'm just getting to see these like supermodels just going after it with the goal in mind to rip down their clothes to bra and panties. That would never, ever, ever, ever happen today. I don't care how much Vince would want it to happen. Now that they're a publicly traded company, there's 0% chance. Like, we have seen our last bra and panties match, but I just remember when I first became a wrestling fan that they happened fairly often. And I was like, is this just like what wrestling is? Like this is
Just
the norm.
women trying to pull
Like,
each other's clothes off.
yeah, I was like, this is what you guys do, huh? And I was not I was into it.
I was definitely confused as a kid when they would have take place because I was like, "Well, this person's my favorite wrestler, but I don't think I want them to win the match."
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my favorite best worst match stipulation is a very obscure one. It only took place once in WCW in 2000. You know I'm a big 2000 WCW guy. It is
Yeah.
a San Francisco 49ers match. Do you know what this is, Jared?
I don't.
All right, so Jeff Jarrett was feuding with Booker T, and they came up with this San Francisco 49ers match. They were not in San Francisco. I don't know why it was called this. It was on a Nitro, and the stipulation was there's 4 boxes, wooden boxes, hung from poles in each corner of the ring. And in 3 of them is a weapon you can use against your opponent. And in 1 of them is the title. And the first person to open the box, like smash it, like Crash Bandicoot style, first person to smash open the box with the title wins. So they start wrestling. They open the first box, they smash it, and a sex doll pops out, like an inflatable sex doll.
What?
And I'm like, what the fuck? So that's that. The second box, smashed open, it is a framed portrait of Scott Hall, who was not in the company at the time. He was like fired for drug use.
Oh.
They keep going. The third box, smashed open, and it's like nothing's there, and everyone's looking around. They're like, "What is it?" Oh, in the debris is a glove. The commentators let us know that it is a coal miner's glove, and it hurts when you punch someone with a coal miner's glove because it is a stiff glove.
Ah,
So Booker T like slips on this coal miner's glove, which looks like he's like a dishwashing glove or something. He just starts punching Jeff Jarrett, and the crowd is like just fucking clueless as to what's going on. Obviously, the last box has the title in it. Jeff Jarrett goes to walk up to it, smash it open. Beetlejuice from Howard Stern's Whack Pack slides out from under the ring wearing a Superman costume, punches Jeff Jarrett right in the dick, and then the box, without anyone touching it, just falls and breaks open. And David Penzer, the ring announcer, just grabs the title and hands it to Booker T. So that was the end of the match. Uh, Steiner comes out at the end and just puts Beetlejuice in the Steiner recliner. You gotta watch this match, buddy.
I mean, WCW did some weird shit back in the day. I mean, the whole Monday Night Wars thing was the biggest, most intense chapter of pro wrestling history. Um, in the stiff competition between the two companies drove, I think, both of them to do some pretty outlandish shit. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. I would imagine that this match right here that you just described for all of us here today was not one of those things that worked.
It wasn't. You gotta go on the WWE network. Yeah, I think you go like Down Vault, WCW Nitro, and it is the December 2nd, 2000 edition of Nitro. It's all the way at the end. This was the main event. You just have to watch this match for yourself to understand how bizarre all of it is. It's incredible.
Sounds it.
So enjoy this interview coming up with Pat Buck, my buddy. Super kicked me right in the face. That's how close we are. Check it out. Joining me now is someone that I've been friends with for a few years. Really wanted to get him on the podcast when I began this podcast. He was the man that trained me when I thought I wanted to be in the ring and not on the other side of the barricade. And he was the man that famously kicked me right in the fucking face WrestleMania weekend. Pat Buck is on the line. Pat, what's going on?
Thanks for having me. Now, am I the man that is single-handedly responsible for training you so hard that you actually decided not to pursue wrestling in that regard anymore? So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
I think it's a good thing because now, you kind of helped me figure out that that's not what I wanted to do, and this is. So, here we are. We're on a podcast now.
I'll take the being responsible for your success then. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you could totally take credit for that. That'd be nice, put it on a resume. Like, I told this guy, you're definitely not a wrestler. But when...
No, you did fine. You had a passion for it. You liked it. But,
I did for sure. So when we could get right into it, the way I discovered you was I wanted to be a wrestler in high school, and it was my sophomore year of high school, I believe. I looked up wrestling schools in the area, just like everyone does, and you were the first result to come up. You were running PWS, Pro Wrestling Syndicate at the time, in a school in Rahway, which is like a half an hour away from where I lived, and I was like, oh, this is great. There's IWF real close to me, but I quickly looked at their website, and I looked at yours, and I realized which school I should go to. And it was interesting because I went looking for your backstory. I was like, all right, if this guy's going to be my trainer, I should study up on his matches and know all this. And I couldn't find many of your matches because most of them were in OVW. And when I listened to your episode on The Art of Wrestling with Colt Cabana, I found your story absolutely fascinating in the sense that your work ethic is like no one else, the way you worked in OVW. Do you want to talk about that dream? You don't have to go over the whole story because I feel like it's been told on so many different platforms now, but just for our listeners, your OVW journey.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think now, especially in 2017, where independent wrestling is super popular and people are just acclimated with, you do the independent circuit in hopes of hoping to make it to a bigger company. At that time period, when I started wrestling, because I broke in 2001, I was doing independence, New England and New York area for about 2 years or so. I saw like a small window, and I wasn't getting the success that I thought I could get elsewhere. I mean, it was just a different time period, and I saw a couple of my buddies go down. OVW I was obsessed with it. It was flourishing, and it seemed like a direct path to a career. And since there was no more WCW, no more ECW, it seemed like the end game would be smart just to get into what was considered the minor leagues of pro wrestling, where they had, you know, the guys like Cena and Brock, and they were hiring new guys. That was the only place. So I said, screw it. Do I go the independent route, and do I wrestle 1 time a week, 2 times a week, 3 at the most, or do I move down there and basically experience a 6 to 7 days a week wrestling system of training, doing shows? So I did that, and I thought, you know, maybe it'd take a year or 2 to get signed, and then I thought it'd take maybe 3 to 4 years, and then I realized after 4.5, it wasn't going to happen. But and I was never signed, but I had this body of work and reputation, and I was full time there for so long, and then I followed it down to Tampa, to FCW, and just, you know, like you said, I missed out on the experiences like a Cabana, a Hero, whoever your independent darling is, because I elected to go down to one system, one territory, and probably work just as many matches or, you know, full time there. But you don't see OVW stuff. It's hidden. You never, the live events were barely recorded. But I kind of came back to the New York independent wrestling scene, or independent wrestling in general, with this, you know, sat under a lot of learning trees, had a lot of matches, had, you know, so much to kind of go, hey, this is what I've been through. Let me start my own thing. And that's kind of where I started the school.
Yeah, so when you were in OVW, and I mean, you already kind of knew how to wrestle at that point, but you had trainers, I assume, and you eventually moved into kind of a trainer role without even being signed. Was Rip Rogers there when you were there?
Oh, he sure was. He was one of the main reasons why I, you know, quick story is that 2001 to 2003, independents were wild up here. They were, you know, and a lot of people think that independent wrestling is just very, you know, punk rock and cool. There's a lot of bad stuff too. I remember I've always wore traditional wrestling gear. I was wearing trunks back then. I remember being heckled on 2 different shows because the fans didn't understand why I was the only guy wrestling in underwear.
You didn't have
It
the
was
you
very,
didn't have
like,
the garbage bag shorts on?
I didn't have that. I didn't have, you know, jean shorts on, and it was just such a scene where I'm like, oh my God, I'm trying to be this professional in shape and wrestle a certain way. You know, I'm not trying to be boring, but I'm trying to be more classical, and everyone else is just kind of dressed like garbage and just kind of, you know, not really caring about psychology or the tools I thought you would need to go to a bigger company. When I moved down there, though, and I was already like 2 or 3, 4 years in. I think we moved down there in 2005. But Rip Rogers was the guy that you know, I trained with pretty much the whole time period. So he was there. Al Snow was there. Lance Storm was there in the beginning. I kind of missed him, but yeah, there was a lot of good teachers down there.
Yeah, it seems like it, and there was just such a good class that came up, and that's how you kind of earned your reputation in the business as a guy that you talk to anyone in the business and you bring up Pat Buck. Well, maybe not anyone. Eric Tapout, probably not a big fan, but you talk to most people and they're like, oh, Pat Buck, love Pat Buck. And I feel like a lot of that came from your time in OVW. Now, after that, you kind of realized this isn't, you know, working out. You had a short stint where you were like, maybe I'll be a referee, this, that.
Mm-hmm.
And you started promoting in the
Yeah.
Northeast area, mostly New Jersey, Pro Wrestling Syndicate, as I mentioned before, which turned into WrestlePro, which it's WrestlePro now. But at the time where I wanted to train, it was Pro Wrestling Syndicate. And I just started coming to shows, helping out, doing the thing that I thought was, you know, like that you hear about in all wrestler documentaries, like, oh, yeah, I went to the show, set up the ring, whatever. Started doing that, started training, and pretty much instantly, I think it was like a month in, I was like, yeah, this just isn't for me. But your training style was very interesting to me because when I was there, the class was fucking huge. Like there must have been 30 people in the class at that time.
Sure. It's very blessed that it worked out, though, because when I started the school, I'm like, no one's going to train under me. No one knows who the hell I am. But I think when people kind of came down and realized that I've spent so much time training, and I think that I don't know if there's currently a wrestler anywhere that has spent more time around different dojos and different, you know, training things than me. I know there's, you know, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I just spent so much time in both developmental things, just being around training every single day. I never missed a beat. So the class kind of grew and people saw the passion, and you know, a lot of wrestling schools are garbage, and they're looking either take your money and hurt you, or they're not looking out for you. I generally want to make people really good because I feel like it's a reflection of me, and I want to keep my reputation high. But I don't. When you have like, it started getting so big, I had to bring another trainer on board, and it's make sure that everybody's doing something productive at all moments. And I do remember when you were there, and I hope it was rewarded.
It was honestly a good time. It wasn't for me, but I was stunned at how professional the whole school was. You hear about independent wrestling. When I was training, they were making me take bumps on concrete, to get me
So,
into the business. They were making me get blown up till I puked. This, that. When I was
yep,
there was pretty much 4 trainers. It was you, Mario Boccara, Kevin Matthews, and Dan Moff.
mm-hmm,
It was like the 4 of you
yep,
would split up into different groups, and someone would be in the ring, someone would be on the outside doing, bumps onto the mat or headlock takedowns, someone would be doing grapple work, someone would be doing this. And I was just stunned at how it felt like a mini performance center. And then I talked to you about training after the fact because I am fascinated with the whole business and the process. And
mm-hmm,
you told me that you learned some of the performance center drills, and you teach your students the performance center drills in the case where if they get a tryout, hopefully they'll already be prepared for it, which I think is like something that not a lot of trainers do. A lot of trainers on the independents are probably like, here's how to do a sunset flip power bomb day 1. And I just think it's very smart. Do you have a few students where it was kind of you molded them from the ground up, or you got them real early where now you're like very proud to be like, yes, I trained that person?
There's a lot of them, and to be honest with you, I could probably name a bunch, and then the other half will listen and be upset that I didn't name them. But the main thing is what you said with the NXT drills is that that's my job. If people are, I've always felt that pro wrestling is hard enough, and I can't stand the places that because there's hundreds, if not thousands, of people across the country that have given huge, amounts of cash to trainers to have their heart broken or to have their love of the business stripped from them, whether they be athletes or non-athletes that can handle the training or not handle the training, or But I believe that make it fair to everybody. Like, it's already athletic, it's hard hitting, it's going to take no matter how good or bad the training is, it's going to wear down on your body. But what I'm trying to say is that it's my job to know what's current. I will train. Like I said, I'm completely a Rip Rogers guy. However, I love independent wrestling, and I know, I've worked for a couple of these smarter promotions. I know what it takes to be an independent wrestler and, get your stuff in and kind of, you have to be a little bit more athletic. You can't be stuck in 1980. You can't be stuck in early 1990. You can't, but then at the same time, you can't throw away psychology and just start the match off with, 3 dives and not sell anything. There's a fine line in the middle. But on top of that, I need to know what's going on in NXT. Traditionally a basic example, you normally roll with the left side. You take an arm drag with the left side. You kind of, that's kind of traditionally the way I was trained, and that's the way it was for years. NXT prefers now that you do it the right side. So even though I'm used to a certain way, I got to kind of adapt and mold and change certain things and tell my guys, look, I like it this way, but they're going to do it this way. And if that's a place you want to work, you got to do it this way. So I kind of have to keep more of an open mind. I find a lot of training schools are just, they're so stuck in their ways, one from lack of experience, or wrestlers are very stubborn, especially if they have some deal of success where they think, well, that's what worked for me, and that's the way I'm going to implement, and that's it. No, wrestling, some of it's black and white. Very little of it is black and white, but everything else is shades of gray. And there's multiple ways to do the same thing. And I'll tell my guys, like, look, I think, do it this way is the way I prefer, but there are also other ways to do it. And then there's some ways you can do something so simple and it'll be used against you. But there's a lot of my guys that, I'd say about 4 or 5 of them have had NXT looks. None of them gotten hired yet, and I'm open about that. Some of the guys that train with me now have, contracts with Impact, my assistant trainers, where I kind of feel that through promoting, I got them back on the map, and because of the shows and the booking and the way I feature them, kind of impressed Impact, and now they're there. So things are going pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite moments in training, it's just like a quick side story, was I think I was doing like wrist locks or something with Mario Boccara, and I look over, and you and Mike Dell were just doing the AJ Styles Okada like insane sequence from like Dominion in 2014. I was like, man, that they're doing some cool moves. I'm like, wait a minute, I watched this last night. They're just doing that because I was like, this is really cool that like my trainer is just like a huge fan, and he's like, man, that AJ Styles match was awesome. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm a mark.
Yeah.
That's where it is. I'm watching this stuff. I'll go to right after this podcast. I'll go to the gym and I'll pop on something while I'm doing cardio. And I remember it distinctly. I saw like it was just a Facebook thing came up, and it was the last like 2 minutes of AJ versus Okada, and I saw that a sequence. I said, my guys would like doing this. Let's see if we can do it. So I just memorized the sequence. Hey guys, we're doing this today. If you can handle it, great. If you can't, go on the outside of the ring. We'll do chain wrestling. And people have a good time. It's relevant. You learn timing. It's just stuff like that keeps it fun. And I'll find stuff on the network. I'll find stuff from New Japan. I'll find stuff and I'll break it down to, last night we were doing Midnight Express tag team spots, and I'll break down the science behind the timing and how you can do this and how you can make this different. And we'll just do that. And 3 hours pass by, and everyone's had a great workout. And if I can teach one thing a day, and I'm always learning too, then, my job as a trainer is successful.
Yeah, and I like that you say that you're a mark because I realized very quickly after I was done training that you're as big a wrestling fan as I am, if not bigger, when I started designing your gear. And we would just have these conversations about just random gear, and I'd be like, you remember what like Jerry Lynn was wearing at Hardcore Heaven, like 97? And you'd be like, yeah, of course, the side design on the trunks. And I was like, all right, this guy like catches my drift. And I'll post some of the gear designs I've done in the past on our Twitter at From the Top. There was a lot of Star Wars related gear because you are as big a Star Wars fan as I am. So I was just like, man, I'm just gonna every design idea I ever had for myself being like, when I'm a wrestler, I'm gonna have all Star Wars gear. I was like, it's all going to Pat right now.
Yeah, I have so many. I have gear that you've designed, which is incredible with that, and I appreciate that. The biggest problem is you can design it well, and I show my gear mate. Try to explain. You designed this Fantastic Four thing that I asked for.
Oh, yeah.
I like combinations of stuff where literally it's trunks into knee pads, into pretty much kind of tassels with boot covers. And then I go to my gear designer and I go, hey, can you make this? Like, what is that? Well, I'm like, oh, well, it goes from Mr. Fantastic, and then there's like Invisible Woman things, and then there's, the thing, and, they can't keep up with it. So you design great stuff, and then I got my knee pads back, and they were orange instead of like thing like yellow, and I lost my mind. But I have so many things from you're responsible for a lot of the gear that I've had made that my closet's just full because I'm a gear mark too. But man, I thank you for that. There's so many things I haven't gotten made yet, but they're on the back burner. I need to find the right. Finding gear in wrestling is just a nightmare. It's a nightmare finding a reliable gear maker, but one day, man, one day.
Yeah, you're definitely my favorite guy I've ever designed gear for because a lot of people will be like, well, I want black trunks and my logo on the back. Can you do that? And I'm like, do you have a logo already? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I could like draw you a picture of trunks and Photoshop your logo on the back. That's fine. Or they'll be like, I want black trunks with black and red kick pads. Can you design me kick pads? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And you're like, I like Star Wars, I like Batman, can you just do something with that? And like instantly I'm like, I have 12 ideas, which one do you want? And you're like 11 of them. And I'm like, okay. And I'll do all 11.
Yeah, you have this I have the X-Wing fighter pilot design that I'm still waiting to pull the trigger on, where I think I sent you a picture of an action figure. I'm like, can you make this into wrestling gear with like a singlet cut this way and doing this? And I lose most of my money buying gear. So thank you.
I think I would too. I'm a huge gear mark, and because of that, Rey Mysterio was my favorite wrestler. Like before I ever saw him wrestle, he made his entrance at WrestleMania 19 in Daredevil gear, and literally he had a match against Matt Hardy. Before the match started, I looked at my brother. I said, "That's my favorite wrestler," and he was like, "All right." So the thing that I feel like a lot of people listening to this podcast want to hear about is the Super Kick WrestleMania weekend. So I was an intern at Barstool for a long time, and in October, when I got hired, I also bought my tickets and flight and all of that to WrestleMania. I said, no matter what, I'll be at WrestleMania. I hope Barstool lets me cover it. Now, in February, I became full-time, so I was like, all right, I'm definitely going to cover WrestleMania. This is sweet. And I got this idea. You were running a show first ever WrestlePro in Orlando. WrestleMania weekend, I think it was the Friday or the Thursday. Was it Thursday?
Thursday, yeah.
So it was the Thursday of WrestleMania weekend, and I was like, I don't know if this is really ballsy of me to ask, but you know what? Pat's my friend. I'm going to ask him. I said, how do you feel about me taking a bump at your show? And you were like, what do you mean? And I was like, maybe like someone super kicks me in the face and I'm a fan. And you're like, yes, I'll do it. And I was like, okay, awesome. And, for a few months, we didn't talk about it much. Day of, we show up. It was me and my camera guy, and we just talked about it. We didn't rehearse it. Everyone said, how many times did you rehearse that? We really didn't. It's hard to, do that. You just said, all right, here's the spot that you're going to stand. And during the match, we're going to roll to the outside. I'm going to come out. You're going to hit Nova with a few chops, which, looking back, I did not hit very good chops. And you said, grab him, and then when he pulls away, just lean right into it. And I was like, you really got to kick me in the face here. And you were kind of hesitant about it. You were like, oh, I'll come really close. And I was like, Pat, you got to fucking lay this in, bud, because we got one shot. And if this doesn't look good.
My hesitation didn't come from I knew I had to hit you hard. My hesitation was, it's all about the noise. And if there is just not a good noise, and if there was no pop with it, then we failed. And I'm like, man, this just better connect. Like, and when it did, because I can't tell. There's been times where I've super kicked guys or thrown, roundhouse kicks where I'm like, oh, I barely touched them. And they're like, you killed me. And there's other times where I'm like, oh, I didn't touch my, I think I crushed them. And they're like, oh, it's fine. But that noise, and I'm just like, man, I can't mess this up, And there's a million things going on. Mind you, I'm running the show, promoting the show, wrestling on the show.
And not only is there a million things going on in the grand scheme, this was a 6-man tag with the BWO versus you, Kevin Matthews, and Mario Boccara. It was like, this was, within the match, there was a million things going on.
Yeah, and it's important. I mean, this is the first time for me as an now that I run WrestlePro and that's my main company, to be a part of, hey, these are the important promotions for WrestleMania weekend. This is one of the kickoff days. So I'm like, oh man, like this could be a little icing on the cake. But boy, did that work out. And how was it? How bad was it?
Listen, it worked out really well. The worst part of it was almost like getting a tattoo, in the sense that the worst part of the whole thing was the lead up. When you guys made your entrances, my cameraman made his way like into the barricade, and I was just sitting there alone in the crowd being like, all right, I need to take a bump here. If I take a good bump, this is going to, blow up on Twitter. People are going to go crazy. They're going to eat it up. I was like, I hope Pat gets, cred from this, all that. And I was like, if I take a bad bump here, we still got to post it, because like I told everyone I was going to do it at work and they're all waiting to see it. But then the joke is on me, and it's like, you revealed that the business is fake. And I was like, I need to take a really good bump. I was not worried at all about the kick, and the kick connected so well. It was like, it felt like a tap on my chin. It was like a quick tap. And like you said, the noise that came from it, it was a gunshot in that place. Yeah. Like, it was the loudest noise ever. And I don't even know if I ever told you this, but I take the bump, and then I was just selling dead until the match was over. Maybe 2 minutes after the match is over. When I took the bump, my head whipped and my glasses went flying into like the 7th row, which I wish you could see in that video. But my glasses went flying. So I'm selling on the floor, and I start to like, quote unquote, wake up. And people, got a good pop when it happened. Some people laughed, some people cheered, whatever. And as I started waking up, someone that was like right there was like, oh my God, he needs help. He's actually hurt. And he's like, I think you're concussed. And he just he's like, listen, you need to sit down. Like, you just got a concussion. You need to sit down. And then like 2 other people came over, and they're like, dude, you got smoked. Are you okay? And I was really working him. I was just like, yeah, I think I'm all right. I think I got to go to the hospital though. So I grabbed my bag and I stumbled out. And the second that door closed behind me, I was just like, oh my God, this is what I've been dreaming of my whole life. I made them believe wrestling was real.
Very good. Very good. I love stuff like that too, because, the wrestling audience, through my promotion and through indie wrestling, we reach our niche audience. And I have people messaging me that are just regular, Barstool fans that are like, "Hey, is that you? Did you just kick someone in the face?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's it's pretty awesome." I love hearing from like my friends that are not really in wrestling. They're like, "Hey, we just saw this thing." I'm like, "That was a blast. That was fucking awesome."
Yeah, that was honestly one of my favorite things I've ever done at Barstool because it's just like it's such an easy 20-second clip to watch, but it's like so funny every time because he just smoked me with this kick, and then like Nova crotches you later. Turns out you got like a staph infection from that or something. Like the whole
Oh
backstory
yeah, I
behind
had
it
no
is like
idea.
so crazy.
Crazy, crazy, crazy.
And then the other thing that came after that, or not after that, actually, like before that, you're coming up on a year with Conversation with the Big Guy, your podcast with Ryback. You were kind of Ryback's agent on the Indies since he left WWE. And I think that's very interesting, too, because a lot of guys will go for like a Hollywood agent on the Indies. And Ryback said, I know Pat from OVW. He's a good guy, and he understands the business. So I'm going to go with
Yeah,
you.
I think that a lot of guys, it's something I never thought I would do ever because like I just never, I deal with it being a promoter. I deal with agents often with people like because I've used like Bret Hart before. I've used gosh, I'm trying to think who else has an agent. Flair has an agent, but I've also seen a lot of guys that have had agents before that are not Hollywood type, but dare I say, family members or friends. And I knew he was leaving before he elected to leave. And I kind of said to him, I said, you're not you want to wrestle. He's like, of course I want to wrestle. I'm like, look, I know the waters. I know how to navigate this. Do you want me to help you with your bookings? And it kind of turned into a full-time thing, and it still is. And I'm his, and I also handle Wade Barrett's appearances for now, and I'm sure he'll start wrestling again when time is right. But he's my former roommate. He's one of my, it's not my best friends, and I had this idea like, hey, let's just do a podcast. Now, granted, I know he's probably, according to these internet darlings, he might be the most hated man on the internet, but we have a hell of a fun podcast where we just basically have a couple drinks and talk about wrestling and talk about fitness and talk about things we find relevant, which is Conversation with the Big Guy. But I've been kind of just being his helping him out, and he helps me out in terms of filling the schedule as far as wrestling shows. And it's something that I think going further, I wouldn't be surprised if WWE's in a collecting period where they're hold on to a lot of people. But if there's someone that leaves and they need help with unless you came from the independents, these guys that are in WWE, when they leave, they don't know what to do. How do you know? I've talked with several people that have either quit or been released, and they go, man, I can't figure out this booking things. People bail on me. I don't know who the good ones are. I don't know how to do this. Things fall apart. And I just kind of approach it from a logical standpoint of, well, who do I know? Which promotions are good? Which promotions, have a good reputation? Which ones have a bad reputation? But organizing tours and stuff like that. So yeah, in a way, I'm kind of, just not doing the promoting and wrestling and the training. I'm also wearing an agent hat, and I enjoy it. It's frustrating. I want to kill some of these promoters, but for the most part, it's just another avenue where I kind of like, you know how it is. I kind of like taking on this. Let me see if I can do this, and it's worked out really well.
Yeah, and even Cody Rhodes came to you when he left WWE, and he called you to get advice because he was like, I know Pat. He put you on his list. You could check out that match. I think that match is on YouTube. That's a really fun one, you versus Cody. But you were on his list because he was like, Pat knows indies. I want to work Pat. His first match ever was with you. And he called you when he left WWE to be like, how do I do this? And a lot of people would probably consider him the most successful to ever leave WWE and go the indie route just because, look at him now. He's the Ring of Honor World Champion. He's challenging Okada for the IWGP title. He's you turn your head and Cody Rhodes is booked somewhere. So it's like, you definitely know what you're talking about when it comes to indies.
Because you can go down two paths, and I think that Cody and Ryback have gone down two different paths. Where Cody, this is a business, but it's like you can, and it depends on financials too. It depends on a lot of different things. But I said, it depends on what you really want to do, and I think Cody has, had a lot to prove, or in his mind, he felt like I need to prove myself. So how would I get? And I just gave him a quick couple thoughts. This is what I think is reasonable. This is what I think. And he's very big on, the opponents and the matchups, where Ryback was more big on the business side of it. Well, it really doesn't really matter about the opponents and the matchups. I'll work with anyone. I'll try to pull a match on anybody, and let's just keep it, let's just do it this way. And Cody's more about like, well, I want to know if I can, I want to work these indie darlings, these people who have created a little bit of buzz for themselves. And it was interesting because I both gave them a particular set of advice after finding out what they wanted to do, and they're both, in my opinion, doing really well. And Cody's like I almost said to him, I was like, what else can you possibly do? You've done so much. And I kind of put a thought in his head. I'm like, now you're going to be the responsible for making this company as great as it can. And I think his eyes kind of lit up. He's like, well, I've never really thought of it that way. I'm like, yeah, well, now you're the guy there. You're champion there. How do you, what's next for you? I don't even know. But, just two good friends of mine that like I said, they did their WWE stuff. And while they were doing all that stuff, I'm navigating the waters between all the stuff that I've been doing for the same amount of time. And it's just interesting how, they were on my show last Thursday. Me and Cody teamed up, and Ryback's on the card. And it's just awesome to sit down and go, man, we've been through so many different paths. I've never been with WWE with these guys. But we're all together right now. We were in developmental system, spread out for 10 years. When they do their thing, I'm doing my thing. And now we're back to the same thing. Wrestling's really interesting like that. You never know what tomorrow is going to be like, or who's going to come from WWE, or who's going to move here, or the way the business is going to change. It's remarkable. If you stick with it long enough, you can kind of figure out what, a success path. So.
Yeah, and now talking about, they did go two different routes, and Ryback maybe doesn't care as much about working specific indie darlings. But now I got to bring up Ryback's next match in WrestlePro, because this is a match I have been asking you for probably like years now. Ryback is finally going to wrestle AR Fox. If you don't know who AR Fox is, this guy's a fucking lunatic. You look up on YouTube like AR Fox highlights. He takes some bumps that you'll never see anyone take ever. And he is a huge Ryback mark. He just does. Since Ryback was in WWE, he would be in PWG doing the "Feed Me More" chant with the crowd because he just loves Ryback. Like, unironically, he's not making a joke at all. He loves Ryback. So as soon as you were like, Ryback, there's some difficulty with WWE, he's probably leaving. I was like, oh, AR Fox, that's the match to make. You got to make Ryback versus AR Fox. And you told me AR Fox was just over the moon to get that matchup.
Yeah, I think he thought I was kidding. I was like, no, because you put that in my head a while ago. Here's what happened too. Interesting fact about what I just talked about with the two different paths. So when Ryback's booked out most of the time, I approve the opponent, just like, that's my job. Just like when Cody approves his opponents, and they go through a process there just to see, because you don't want to, you don't want to go in there with it's just the right thing to do. Find out who you're wrestling. And what's happening a lot with Ryback is when he does these independent shows, every local promoter goes, well, I'm going to put you with our big guy. And he's been wrestling these monsters, these very large, and he's at a point now, he's like, look, I came from TV working Mark Henry and Big Show and all these bigger guys. Like, I want to go his best matches, and part of the reasons why he's pigeonholed into, they're both so good. Cody's good. Ryback's good. I don't think people really understand, like with Ryback, that it's more about the matchups. Like, there's only so much you can do when you wrestle these giant dudes. He's like, I want to work some good people. And the AR Fox thing came up, and they're both available. So September 9th, Ryback versus AR Fox. And they've met before, and Ryback's like, oh, I like that guy. I'd like to wrestle him. And they're both, I think, very, very, very excited to do this. And I think they both, I think they'll mix well, and I think it'll be an incredible matchup, and that's September 9th at WrestlePro.
I think so, too, because I felt like Ryback's best matches were against Kalisto, and
yeah.
I loved his, dynamic. They were all in the pre-show, which was a shame because they were phenomenal, but also maybe not a shame because they got a lot of time. But Ryback versus smaller guys was always what I was into. Now, where can you get tickets to that show?
WrestleProOnline.com, and it's the same website if you want to check out the schools. I have two schools, Creative Pro Wrestling, which is like the feeder system for WrestlePro. It's just a different way of, Creative Pro is the school, WrestlePro is the promotion, and that's CreativeProWrestling.com for the schools, WrestleProOnline.com for my events, and I have a lot of events coming up with a lot of cool stuff on it.
And you can follow Pat on Twitter at BuckNeverStops. And before we let you go, we ask every guest, give us an obscure match recommendation. You could be in it, you could not be in it. Just a match that most of our listeners have never seen before that you think they should check out.
Oh boy. Now, okay, from the people you've had on this show, do they pick good matches or train wrecks?
Good matches.
Ah, man, I was gonna pick a train wreck. Okay.
I mean, if it's a so bad it's good train wreck, I think it's just a match our listeners should check out. You could start a new thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna start a new thing. I got to kind of, because if I were picking, like before I was watching, Chris versus Eddie at Vengeance 2003. I'm obsessed with that match. But let's do a little bit more fun here. Here's my match: Heidenreich versus Doink. It happens on an independent show in a Golden Corral parking lot. It's on YouTube, and I don't know if you've seen this before.
I have not seen this.
You will thank me after this. They put in some serious time. They fight all over the parking lot. They fight across the street. Now, it's not really Doink. It's a heavy, obviously. It's a very portly man. I'm assuming he's the promoter. Wrestling
Probably the champion, too.
It's mind-blowing. It's so bad. It's so bad, it's so good that you won't leave your computer. But Heidenreich versus Doink in the Golden Corral parking lot. Ryback, Wade Barrett. It's probably our favorite match of all time. I highly recommend sitting through this. It's incredible.
All right, I'm gonna have to check that out. That might be, before I even watch it, it might be my favorite obscure match recommendation of all time. All right, Pat. Thank you for joining us.
Very cool. Thanks a lot, and check out Conversations with the Big Guy podcast. Good luck to you guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, so we want to thank Pat Buck for coming on with us here today. It was nice to hear about your little relationship and how you got kicked in the face. I want to do some of that stuff. Like, I want to potentially get kicked in the face at a wrestling show.
We got a big weekend coming next April in New Orleans, and we're gonna have to find somewhere where we could break your wrestling cherry, get you taking bumps at shows in front of fans. It's some feeling. I mean, like I said in that interview, I thought I was gonna throw up while that match was going on, just knowing, well, the finish of this match relies on me taking a good bump.
Yeah. That's a lot of pressure. You can't fuck that up, and you get one take. There's no retakes.
One take. That's the beauty of wrestling, ladies and gentlemen. This has been From the Top Rope, episode 6, 7, something, whatever the fuck it is. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Instagram at From the Top. Rate us on iTunes and review us. We look at the stats. We'll get your IP address. If you don't, we'll come to your house and we'll kick your ass, Jay and Silent Bob style.
True.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next week. Tune in on Monday, actually, for a Battleground recap. We'll be talking Punjabi prisons all